Sometimes you hear Reza's dog, Coco, barking on this podcast. Now, you know that dogs bark, but what noise do cats make? And what about goats and horses and lions? And what do you call a group of lions in English? You'll learn what we call the sounds that some animals make in English, and also what we call these animals when they are in groups. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello, and if you're a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with 50 years of teaching English between us, we're going to help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. How are you, mate?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling good. I'm raring to go. As always, I can't wait to start recording this podcast. And you?
Exactly the same. I've been looking forward to this for minutes. So, first this week, we have a voice message from friend of the show, Andres from Colombia.
Hey Reza, hey Craig, this is Andres from Colombia. Hey guys, recently I was watching a documentary about animals on the TV, and I realized that I don't know how to say in English or how to name in English the sound of some animals. I already know that, for example, dogs bark or lions roar, but what about elephants or horses or some other animals? And I'd like to know how to call a specific group of animals. According to each animal, you have to name that group with a specific word, or at least it works like that in Spanish. I suppose it's the same in English. So I'd like to know maybe in a future episode some vocabulary related to animals, how to call them, how to call the group of animals, how to call the sounds they do, or how to describe them as well. So that's my suggestion, guys. I hope everything goes well with you, and have a nice one. Bye.
Thank you, Andres. Always a pleasure to hear from you and your excellent idea of animal sounds and the names of those groups of animals, which we could say collective nouns. Now, we're not going to speak about too many because we don't think that the more uncommon words are going to be very useful for you, but we will explain some of the common words that we think you can use in conversation. But before that, Reza, do you have any comments on Andres's message?
Thanks, Andres. It was a very clear message, so you communicated exactly what you had to communicate. Well done. I did notice one little vocabulary mistake, which we could easily correct. You said that you wanted to know, and your words were, how to call the different groups of animals. We don't say how there, we say what to call. So you want to know what to call them. Or you could also say you want to know how to say it. So you've mixed the two things. It's what to call and how to say. But you can't do the reverse. You can't put what with say and you can't put how with call. So what to call or how to say those words.
And another very, very small thing, Andres, we understood what you meant when you said how it goes with you. But the more common expression will be to put that in present continuous and say, how's it going? How's it going with you? What's happening? How are you doing? So those kind of expressions would be more often in present continuous. Now, you mentioned dogs, and as you correctly said, dogs do bark, as Coco does. But they also have other noises, don't they, Reza? What does Coco do when he's making a noise but he's not barking?
Well, Coco does a couple of things that all dogs do from time to time. He growls. So he might kind of go or something like that.
It's just like Coco is standing next to us when you make that noise, Reza. That was so dog-like. Unbelievable.
And very occasionally, when he's really excited or perhaps really sad or something like that, he might howl. Craig, I'll leave it up to you to do a howl. I'm sure you can do better than my growl.
Oh!
That was really good, actually.
Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic.
I've been practicing my howls. Now, when dogs are in groups, we call them a pack of dogs, P-A-C-K, like a pack of cards, for example. But usually only when they're wild dogs, when they're in the street, when they're running together. Because cats and dogs, they're very often domesticated. But if they are wild and they don't have owners, they don't live in houses, you might see a pack of dogs in the street running wild.
So, dogs, along with cats, are probably the animals that we have most contact with. So, we need to know how to talk about cats. Well, you won't be, I think, in the least surprised to hear that we have a word which is meow, which describes the sound that cats make. Meow. Did you hear that cat? Did you hear that little kitty? So you just heard a cat meowing there. A cat which had an Essex accent, strangely enough. I don't know what it was doing in Valencia. A cat has got from Essex all the way to Valencia. I bet that word meow is more or less universal. The Spanish say the same. I've seen about 3 or 4 different accepted ways to spell meow in English. So you can pretty much spell it as you like, from what I've seen. In the dictionary,
The cats don't mind.
Cats don't. Yeah, they're very flexible. I've seen 4 accepted spellings of meow. So don't worry too much about the spelling of it. But Craig, meowing is not the only sound that cats make, is it?
No, when cats are very happy and contented and they're sitting on your lap and you're stroking the cat and making a fuss of the cat, you might hear the cat purring. To purr is the verb, P-U-R-R. And that's an onomatopoeic word, isn't it? It sounds the same as what it actually is. Can you give us an example of a purr, Reza?
Here goes my purr.
So that's actually a Belfast cat that sounds a little bit like a Harley Davidson, but we'll move on quickly.
Craig, you said that a cat might purr, or as we say in Belfast, purr.
Purr.
This is when you really see the difference between different types of accents. Craig, can you say the word? So it's P-U-R-R. Craig says
Purr.
I say purr. And I'm going to pretend I'm an American now, and I might say something like purr or something like that. So that R sound varies a lot depending on where you come from. I don't know if cats have different accents, but certainly with humans, you'll notice a big difference in the pronunciation of final R there. And Craig, you said that cats might purr when they're, for example, on your lap and they're stroking them. Craig, can you remember the last time you had a nice little pussy on your lap and it was contentedly purring?
I'm not really a cat lover, so the last time I had a pussy on my lap was probably about 20 years ago, so I much prefer dogs to cats. But if a cat is a baby, you could call it a little pussy, or you could call it a kitten, K-I-T-T-E-N, a baby cat. And when cats or when kittens are born, then they're called a litter of kittens. You might hear, the neighbor's cat has had a litter of kittens. Would you like one as a pet? Now, there is a collective noun, a group name for cats, although I'd never heard it before. So if I were you, I wouldn't rush to learn it immediately. It's not a common word. What is it, Reza? A group of cats.
Well, we just discovered this word recently, clowder, C-L-O-W-D-E-R, a clowder of cats. That's not common. Unlike a pack of dogs is very common, but I'd never heard of a clowder before, I have to admit.
Not very common, but a litter of kittens is quite a common collocation. Moving on to what Andres mentioned regarding lions, he did know the noise a lion makes, that is a roar. Now be careful of that vowel sound, or, it's a roar. Let's see what it's like in Belfast.
Roar.
Very similar, yeah. So lions roar. And the collective noun for lions is, I think, fairly easy to remember. It's a pride of lions. Pride. Now, the adjective of pride is proud. And if you look at lions, when they're looking over the savannah and they're looking from the top of a hill, they're very majestic. They do look very proud of themselves. So imagine the look that a lion has when it's relaxing under a tree. It looks very proud. And then it's a pride of lions. That's the collective noun.
Of course they're proud, yeah, because they're the king of the jungle. The lions rule, and lions know that nobody's gonna muck about with them. To muck about is give problems. So yeah, they look proud because they know nobody dares irritate me.
No one's gonna mess around with that big pussy. Moving on to an animal that's more domesticated than a lion, and that is a cow. You often see cows in fields, and if you get close enough, you might hear them go moo. M-O-O. That's the noise a cow makes. Cows moo in English. Do they moo in your language, I wonder? What do you call a group of cows, Reza?
Herd. That's H-E-R-D. A herd of cows, and they moo. M-O-O.
And also, you get herds of other animals. For example, goats. G-O-A-T-S. Goats. And the noise that a goat makes is bleat. B-L-E-A-T. So you might hear some goats bleating. That's the noise they make. And the same as cows, they are in a herd. Are there any other animals that go around together in a herd?
There are a few others, but the more important ones to remember are elephants. We also talk about a herd of elephants. And the noise an elephant makes, which I can't copy, it's too difficult to copy. But if you can imagine an excited elephant, it trumpets. Because it sounds a bit like a trumpet player. That's, I told you it wasn't very good, but it sounds a little bit like somebody playing the trumpet. So an elephant trumpets.
And if you think about it, the trunk of the elephant, T-R-U-N-K, which is that huge nose that elephants have, it's the trunk. It looks a little bit like a trumpet. Maybe you can remember that by imagining the nose of an elephant as a trumpet, and that is the noise it makes. It trumpets.
Another herd of animals could be horses. So when you get a group of horses together, they're in a herd. And the noise they make, let's see if I can do it. Oh, Greg, you find this horse amusing?
I think we've lost half of the listeners.
Okay, that's enough horseplay. The noise that a horse makes, how can we remember it? Think of horses as being very negative. Yeah, they don't like to be asked questions, so they say neigh. N-E-I-G-H, neigh. Which is a very old-fashioned word for no as well.
Have you ever ridden a horse?
I would like to say nay. But actually I have once or twice, and it was a really fun experience. What about you?
Yeah, I have. I've ridden a horse a couple of times, and I remember galloping, which is when the horse runs really fast, and trotting. T-R-O-T. Now, trotting is when your bum constantly hits the saddle, which is on the back of the horse, the saddle. The trotting, when the horse trots, I couldn't get the rhythm. I couldn't get the hang of it, you can say. I couldn't become accustomed to comfortably trotting. But when the horse galloped and it went really, really fast, it became smooth. And it was amazing. With the wind and galloping on the back of a horse, absolutely fantastic.
And did it hurt your bottom? I better explain bottom because I bet the South American listeners don't know the word bum, as in culo. They'll know the word bottom from American English. Did it hurt your bottom?
It did when it was trotting. Trotting hurt my bottom. Galloping didn't. Moving on to sheep. S-H-E-E-P. Now, sheep make the noise bah. That's a sheep from South London. And the name of that is to bleat, B-L-E-A-T. Now be careful with sheep, because the plural, if you have more than one sheep, it's also sheep. So we don't put an S on sheep. You never say there are many sheeps in the field. You say there are many sheep. What's the name of a group of sheep?
It's not herd. Some people say herd, but they're wrong. It's a flock of sheep. F-L-O-C-K, a flock of sheep.
Let's move on to things that fly. You may have heard of the social media website Twitter. And when you use Twitter and you write in your messages, that's called to tweet. T-W-E-E-T. And that is the sound that a bird makes, which is why Twitter has a bird icon on that social media platform. So birds tweet, or they also chirp. C-H-I-R-P, another verb, to chirp. And the collective noun for birds is often flock, a flock of birds, the same as sheep. So birds flock together and sheep flock together.
Birds of a feather flock together, do they not?
Birds of a feather flock together. What does that mean?
So to flock together, to come together as a group. Birds of a feather is a very poetic and old-fashioned way of saying birds which are similar. Birds who have the same type of feathers. In other words, they're the same type of bird. They tend to come together in a group. So metaphorically, if you say birds of a feather flock together, you mean people who are similar tend to hang around together or do things together or associate with each other.
So you could say like attracts like. People of the same interests, the same character tend to come together. So you can also judge a man or a woman by their friends.
Another flying animal, but much smaller, it's an insect, is a bee. That's B-E-E. So bees, as you know, make a sound like this. Bzz, bzz, bzz.
Oh, there's one in the room. I can hear it. I can hear it in the room.
Can't
Such
get
a
it.
good impersonation.
It stung me.
Bee sting, yeah. And wasps.
But the sound they make is to buzz. B-U-Z-Z. So, as we usually do in English, we try to get a word which sounds like the sound, more or less. So, bzz, buzz. And that group of insects is a swarm of bees. You could also say a swarm of wasps or similar insects. A swarm, S-W-A-R-M, a swarm of bees.
You can also use that as a verb to describe human behavior. For example, the Apple fans swarmed around the Apple store awaiting the sale of the latest iPhone. There was a swarm of people waiting to buy it. So a huge group. Reza, what animal does a cat like to chase apart from birds?
Well, I'm sure everybody knows cats chase mice. Mice, M-I-C-E, is the plural. But if you've only got one, it's a mouse, like Mickey Mouse. Craig, have you seen much of Mickey Mouse recently?
We haven't spoken about Mickey for a while. Now, Mickey is a mouse who I am quite fond of, and for some reason that made Ray a laugh in the past, and he's been ridiculing me for a long time about my affection for Mickey Mouse. And no, I haven't seen Mickey Mouse for a long time.
You haven't heard a squeak out of him?
He hasn't. No, I haven't heard a squeak from Mickey. Squeak is the sound that a mouse makes, and I will try and do my impersonation of a squeak. It's that's the noise that a mouse makes. It squeaks like my chair, and a group of mice is called a nest of mice, similar to a bird's nest, N-E-S-T. There's another word, not so common, a mischief of mice, which I quite like. Mischief is when you are naughty, maybe you do things that are a little bad, but not too bad. And very often children like to make mischief or do mischief. They like to do naughty, bad things. MISCHIEF. Remember, you can see all of these words and the spellings on the show notes at inglespodcast.com/445.
To remember that word mischief, think of the most famous mischievous mouse of all time, Jerry. He loved a bit of mischief.
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry. So Tom was the cat, Jerry was the mouse, and he loved mischief. That might help you think of a mischief of mice, because Jerry was very mischievous. We've got one more because of the sound, croak. What animal do you think that is?
CROAK, to croak. That is a frog, isn't it? Frogs croak.
That's a frog. The group name army is perhaps not so common. You don't often hear it, but we say an army of frogs. But you do often hear the word croak. A frog croaked. That was that a frog or a bird? I'm not quite sure.
No, I think there's a problem with your microphone. Have you ever eaten frog's legs?
I have. They're not bad. Have you tried them?
Well, I nearly tried them once. I was in Paris and I said to the waiter, "Have you got frog's legs?" He said, "No, it's the way I walk." No, I haven't. I've never eaten frog's legs and I don't think I ever will. Doesn't appeal to me.
They're all right. It's kind of like a strange type of chicken. I know everybody says that about weird meat, but it's true. It's kind of like chicken. We've been talking about the sounds that animals make. Frogs croak, horses neigh, cats meow, etc. But did you know that although we say that dogs bark, when we write the actual sound that they make, we write the word woof, W-O-O-F, or sometimes even bow wow. Have you seen that?
Yeah, occasionally.
So woof and bow wow are not verbs. They're used as a sound. So I heard the woof or I heard the bow wow of a dog. But when you actually talk about the action, what is the dog doing? It's barking. So we got a different word for the actual sound, and for the verb, the action of making the sound is. So a dog barks, it says woof or bow wow. And something similar happens with a cockerel or a rooster, as they tend to say in American English, the male bird. Not the one that lays the eggs, but the male one.
Not the chicken.
Not the chicken, but the chicken's husband or boyfriend or partner. And in Spanish, you say kikiriki. In English, we say cock-a-doodle-doo.
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
That's not a word you would guess if you hadn't seen it written.
You have to go to the show notes and see that written. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Cock-a-doodle-doo, which could sound like the noise they actually make. Why did a chicken cross the road?
To get to the other side?
Exactly. Well done, Reza. Finally, a crow is a type of bird, C-R-O-W. It's a black bird, and it often has the image of being quite a dark, ominous, maybe bringing bad luck kind of bird. It was very present in some horror films like The Omen, for example. And I think in Alfred Hitchcock's film, The Birds, they were crows that were eating people. So a crow crows. That's the name of the noise it makes. It crows. And the verb to crow means that you're boasting about something. You are really saying you are a fantastic English teacher. You are the best English teacher in the world. Nobody is a better English teacher than you.
So, stop crowing, Craig.
I'm crowing, about my English teaching skills.
So we quite often use it to talk about another person. So you wouldn't say that I crow. You would say to somebody else who is talking too much about their own achievements, you would say, stop crowing. Yeah, we know you're brilliant.
Exactly. Now, we've mentioned quite a few collective nouns that are in common use in English. For example, you might see a flock of sheep in the fields, or see a herd of horses running, or see a flock of birds flying over your head. But there are some more unusual but interesting collective nouns that maybe you wouldn't use on a daily basis. It's not very common, but we think they're quite interesting. For example, flamingos are lovely pink birds with long legs. What's the collective noun for a group of flamingos, Reza?
Believe it or not, we say a flamboyance of flamingos. A flamboyance. Well, they are very flamboyant creatures. They're pink, long legs. They're quite something to look at.
They attract attention.
They attract attention, as do flamboyant people. So the group of those birds is a flamboyance of flamingos.
If you can imagine a group of maybe middle-aged or elderly ladies sitting together, moaning and complaining and speaking over each other, and they're constantly speaking, you might say that they are gaggling, Gaggle. And a gaggle is a collective noun for a group of geese. One goose, OOSE, GOOSE, and many geese, GEESE. So a gaggle of geese. Imagine the noise they make when they're together. Then that's the collective noun for geese.
Now the next one, according to Google, is a lounge of lizards. That's a group of lizards. I didn't know that word lounge used as a noun to describe lizards, but I certainly had heard of a lounge lizard.
Yeah, me too.
So what is a person who's a lounge lizard, Craig?
I imagine the person sitting around, being very lazy, relaxing, not doing very much, maybe smoking a cigar or drinking a cocktail. Is that what you would imagine?
Yeah, and they like hanging around lounge bars, so taking it easy, relaxing, having a drink, that type of person.
So if you can picture in your mind a lizard smoking a cigar and drinking a cocktail, sitting on a bar stool, get that image in your head. Yeah, it's a lounge of lizards. That's the collective noun for lizards.
Now, can pigs drive? I don't know. Can pigs fly? Well, possibly. I will talk about that in a minute. But we talk about a drove. Yeah, DROVE. Sounds like the past of drive, doesn't it? A drove of pigs is a group of pigs. Craig, can pigs fly?
Well, we use that to say that something's impossible.
We've just won the prize, you and I, the sexiest podcasters in the world. And you'll say, yeah, and pigs can fly. Yeah. Like, no way. I can't believe that. We haven't won that. And you're right, we haven't. I made it up. It's not true.
Or if you said to me, Craig, would you run a marathon one day? I'll say, yeah, when pigs can fly, I'll run a marathon.
In other words, never.
We spoke about crows earlier, the black birds that are quite dark, maybe have an image of being evil or mysterious or even bad-tempered. Well, then it's quite appropriate to imagine a murder of crows. So the group collective noun for crows is murder, M-U-R-D-E-R, a murder of crows. Very appropriate.
The next one, which describes another type of bird, is one that I have heard used a few times, a parliament of owls. Yes, a parliament, like where politicians go to speak. A parliament of owls describes a group of owls, those animals which are supposed to be very wise birds. They know a lot of things, and they come out at night. They're nocturnal.
So you'd imagine them to be intelligent, perhaps, and very clever. Not exactly the British Parliament, is it?
No, not these days anyway.
The verb to cackle, C-A-C-K-L-E. Imagine a witch with a big cauldron, a big pot, making a spell and laughing to herself as she invents this big curse that she's going to, this big spell that she's going to kill somebody with, and she's going, that's a cackle. And that's the collective noun for a group of hyenas. And hyenas is a dog-like animal that you would find in African countries, that they tend to come to dead animals and eat them after the lions and leopards have killed them. So these hyenas, they go around in packs as well, similar to dogs, and they feed on animals that have just been killed. So a cackle of hyenas.
Craig, now there aren't any words that I know of for certain groups, but let's just imagine. Let's invent words. What word would you invent for a group of teachers?
Ooh, a collective noun for a group of teachers. Maybe a poverty of teachers.
Because we never earn much money?
Being poor, a poverty. Do you have any ideas for a group of teachers?
Poverty's good, or a volume of teachers, like a volume of books, maybe?
Yeah, or being very loud.
Yeah, exactly.
A volume of teachers. What about politicians? We spoke about a parliament of owls. Can you think of a good collective noun to describe politicians?
I can, but I'm not sure it can go out on the podcast. Can I say a shower of bastards?
Well, you just said it,
Okay.
so we'll leave it in.
Okay.
I thought maybe a deception of politicians.
Okay.
Let's go to nurses, and why not? What's a group of nurses, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know any word, but if I had to invent one, it would be maybe, what could I say? Let's think of the qualities of nurses. A care group of nurses, something like that. That's what they do, isn't it? They care for people.
That's nice. What about a saint of nurses?
Yeah, I like that.
Or a dedication?
Yeah.
A dedication of nurses in the hospital.
We're inventing these nouns, listeners.
Yes.
Don't forget, they don't really
Don't
exist.
learn these because they don't exist, but we're just thinking off the cuff, which if you listened last week, you'll know that expression. We're thinking of these names off the cuff. We've got three more. A group of graphic designers.
Ooh, graphically design. A sketch of designers.
Ooh.
What about that?
Very good. Very good.
A sketch, because a sketch is a quick, not very detailed drawing. A sketch of designers.
An imagination of designers. Okay, bankers, people who work in banks. Bankers.
A lot of very, very rude words come to mind. I'd rather not say. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, I've got two ideas. A steal of bankers. And I hope there's no bankers listening. And a robbery of bankers, maybe.
And Craig, the last one, it actually already exists. I haven't made it up. Do you know an expression for a group of beautiful women?
Is it a temptation?
According to internet,
Or a flower?
but I've never heard it. I saw that in internet as well, but has anybody ever said it to you?
I didn't see that on internet. I just thought of that now.
I saw temptation on internet. I looked
Really?
into it. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I think it's like somebody just off the cuff making it up. But what I've heard many times, it's not new, is a bevy of beauties.
Yes, a bevy of beauties.
I didn't make that up. That's a thing. BEVY, a bevy of beauties is a nice way. It's a nice way of saying a group of beautiful women, a bevy of beauties.
That's lovely. That's a lovely way to finish. Do you have any ideas for group names? If you do, we would love to hear them from you. Thank you very much, Andres, for your idea for today's podcasts. If you have any ideas for future podcasts, we would love to hear from you. Please send us a voice message. Tell us your name, where you're from, and any comments or ideas you have. You can do that using our SpeakPipe service. Go to speakpipe.com, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast.
If you prefer, you could email us. There's Craig at inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to buy a paid course for your English, go to store.mencioningles.net.
We'd like to thank, as ever, all those people who donate money to the podcast through the Patreon scheme. That's Patreon. And what they do is they voluntarily donate as little as $1.20 per month. The 20 is for tax purposes. And as a way of saying thank you for their donation, we give them instant access to recent audio transcriptions. So if you might be interested in that, follow the link in the show notes to patreon.com/Inglespodcast. We'd like to say thank you to every single one of our patrons, but We never have time for that. We only have time to say thanks to the most recent sponsors. Who are they, Craig?
They are Rosa Ayalon, Gerard, Javier Correa Zambade, Silvia, Victoria Romera, Martin Arista, Michaela, Antonio Garcia, who is paying more than the minimum $1.20. Thank you, Antonio. And Juanjo Cuyas, who has recently increased his donation. So thank you to you and to everybody who is supporting us on Patreon. What's next week, Reza?
I'm going to read what's written here. It says that there's a special guest who will help you with your pronunciation. But I must admit, I'm in the dark as well. I don't know. I'm looking forward to having the mystery revealed.
Yes, we have a guest lined up who's coming on the podcast, so make sure you listen next week and everything will become clear. Until next time, thank you very much for listening this week. Have a wonderful week. And if you've got some value from this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you told your friends so that more people can listen to us. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.